Kevin. Kind of money we're talking about for the part-time for the seasonal person.
Oh, you can sign the resolution.
All right, how are you?
Any questions during the public session, please? Just for public comment.
Any questions?
While we're doing it, that's why, don't be shy.
Thank you.
Right.
That's what I was gonna say.
How are you doing? Very good.
How you doing? They wouldn't have a right now.
That's a good answer. About 8 o'clock?
I think the range is.
That's up to you guys.
Oh, it's not you. Now,
And you.
now, so if they don't work for whatever reason, they don't get paid.
Because I talk so much.
Yes, you do. I didn't point that out, but now I won't have to.
You're up there, please. Then let me turn the camera on. So questions asked, you can answer them now.
No, I really did.
Mary?
Absolutely.
This council meeting is called to order in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Law. This council meeting of April 17, 2023 was included in the list of meetings published in the Courier News and Star Ledger. Notice of this meeting was placed on the bulletin board at Borough Hall and announced on the borough's website. A copy of this notice is available to the public, and a copy of the statement shall be included in the minutes of this meeting. Mayor Dennis Sullivan.
Here.
Council members, Granville Brady.
Here.
Tom Mitchell.
Here.
Gina Stravick.
Here.
Roger Vroom.
Here.
Fred Weed is excused this evening. Randy Pitts.
Here. I'd like to invite Mr. Gary Yeager from Troop 84 to come forward and lead us in our flag salute and ask the audience to join us.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Scott. We have one set of minutes to approve from our April 3rd meeting. I'll take a motion. So moved. Second.
Council members, Granville Brady.
Yes.
Tom Mitchell.
Yes.
Gina Stravick.
Yes.
Roger Vroom.
Yes.
Randy Pitts.
Yes. Departmental reports are as listed. We have just the one this month, Animal Control Solutions for March. Committee reports, each council person will give us a quick summary of different committees that they represent and the activities that have happened within the last 2 weeks. And I'll start to my far left with Councilman Mitchell.
Nothing to report tonight, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilman Groom.
I have nothing else.
Councilman Brady.
I certainly like to break the trend, Your Honor. I might have mentioned that the Finance Department is taking control of the borough's escrow accounts for applicants to deposit escrow funds to satisfy the permitting, review, and granting of CO projects that require us to do a great deal of work in order to get these projects going. So the applicant establishes an escrow account with us, and then all of the costs involved with it come from that account. One of the requirements is that we implement is to ask all of our consultants to itemize their invoices. By unbundling the hours and services provided, it allows applicants and the finance department greater transparency over what the applicant is paying in escrow funds for the services rendered. I think it will lead to a great deal more efficiency. So I have to report that all of our consultants have agreed to and do submit to me for approval itemized bills that I can now check on and approve.
So
And that's all I have.
the intent is that no taxpayer dollars are spent in reviewing these plans for people wanting to build in town.
Technically, this is not to make money for the borough, and it's not to cost taxpayers money. It's designed to be a self-financing, but we do control the escrow account, how it's paid and monitored and what have you, just as we would any other account.
And if it runs short, the applicant is required to write another check.
So
Excellent.
that's my excitement for tonight.
Thank you.
Okay.
Councilwoman.
The Environmental Commission would like to remind everyone to, it's Earth Week and to practice good habits regarding care for the earth and the environment, plant a tree, recycle, and come to the cleanup on April 22nd at 9 a.m. at the high school. We'll be having a green fair, there's a town swap day, all the information can be found on the Environmental Commission website and I think also on the calendar. So we look forward to a great event. Trees will be available also, tree seedlings. Encourage all residents to plant trees in their yard, and it looks promising weather. So see you there.
Thank you. Mr. President.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have a few things. It Takes a Village, Let's Talk. A 3-part series for parents and others exploring the prevention of, treatment for, and recovery from substance abuse disorder. Hosted by Not an Easy Fix. To be held at St. John's Episcopal Church, Wednesday, April 26th, May 3rd, and May 10th, 7 to 8:30 p.m. The event's sponsored by Not an Easy Fix in partnership with the Borough of Somerville and the Somerville Municipal Alliance. The event is free. Hope to see you there. This Thursday, April 20th, 6 to 7:30 p.m., Empower Somerset presents Escape the Vape, a virtual discussion on the dangers of vaping, e-cigarettes, and other tobacco products, featuring Rob Holliday. This event is open to middle and high school students and their parents. For more information, please go to empowersomerset.com. I'd like to congratulate my longtime friend and Somerville Community Police Officer, Vito Spadea, on being nominated for the Do Good Hero Award. Officer Spadea has been a member of the NJSPBA for over 18 years, and also a DARE member instructor for many years. I want to give a special thanks for all that he does here in the community, and wish him all the best from all of us seated here. And the new Downtown Somerville Alliance website is now live. Please go take a look. I think it's one of the best. Of course, I'm biased. The new web address is downtownsomerville.org. That's all.
The first two items you mentioned about the vaping and the Empower, make sure that Kevin has those for our website as well. We'll cross-promote it.
Thank you.
Knowledge is power. And that, the more you know. All right, just two quick reports from myself. I had the honor to attend the first annual Middle School Life Skills Day today. The students had a book-free and technology-free day. Basically, each subject matter had speakers coming in, and Officer Spadeo, I saw him arriving as I was leaving this morning. I was asked to do a brief presentation on borough government, who it is, what it does, and how students, even as young as middle school, can get involved in the community. I asked the students if they could estimate the mayor's salary. And one young man, God bless his soul, said about $5 million. So I suggested that his father call the governor's office tomorrow. I'll report back on that initiative later on. Talked about your roles as liaisons to various committees, how much money it takes to run the town. Again, their estimates were way off. But I think it's important for middle school kids who are on the threshold of high schoolhood and then on the threshold of the world of work and jobs to know that it costs us a lot of money to keep our street lights on, to keep our water in our fire hydrants, to keep our roads safe and clean. And it was a very interesting morning for me. I got to dust off my rusted teaching skills. And I enjoyed it immensely. I did not stay for lunch. I was invited to stay for lunch, but I haven't eaten a school lunch in 14 years, and I don't plan to start now. But if you have a middle school student, they might come home and talk to you about the exciting day that they had with the mayor. It was my honor and privilege to participate in that. And if they do more programming, I'm going to let you all know. We each have a lot of value to contribute as to what we do. It's not just the 2 hours we spend here at a meeting. It's the day-to-day work, and hopefully they'll ask some more probing questions. Councilwoman Strauby mentioned recycling, and I've gotten many calls over the last year, especially, where's my new recycling bucket? The way the original program was set up when the new trucks came on was that each municipality in the county would get about half the town done with the new buckets. Once that was done, the county would go back and complete each town with the bucket. Well, I've made numerous calls to numerous people at County Recycling, and I'm going to start again tomorrow in the spirit of Earth Day, asking the question, what about the western half of our town? I don't know where the demarcation zone is. I think it's either Bridge Street or Davenport Street. So half the town has the new buckets, which already are starting to break. So I'm hoping I can get everybody a new recycling bucket by the time it comes time to replace the ones that are replacing them. And interesting, if you still have the old round blue bucket, if you look at the bottom, they're not recyclable. It's government gone haywire. Because when I got my new one, I said, well, I'll recycle my old one. I flipped it over, there's no little triangle. So the original blue recycling buckets are not recyclable. You can figure that. But I'm going to make another bucket. What?
How would you fit it in a bucket?
You'd have to cut it up. But I'd like to see the whole town have the new technology. But it's just frustrating on my part. But folks, I'm not going to give up. It took me years to get the speed limits reduced, so I'm going to try real hard. It's not a big deal, but it should be done. It's been at least 2 or 3 years now. And the county wants us to recycle. They want us to be efficient. They want us to do what's right. We just need some help. So more on Bucketgate as the spring and summer goes through.
Those buckets are really great, let me tell you.
Well, they have wheels, which is good, but if you don't have one, you're jealous of your neighbors on the east side of town that do. So we're working on it, folks. Just be patient. And again, join us Saturday at 9 o'clock at the high school. All right, we have one discussion item for tonight. I have my Director of Community Development, Colin Driver, to present I always have a slideshow. I'm showing my age here. PowerPoint on what is a pilot, what does it do, and why do we have them. So I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Driver, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor. You'll settle?
Okay.
Okay, the introduction says it all. This is a short version of what could be a lot longer, and it doesn't get completely into the weeds as some presentations I do have a habit of doing. We're going to compare initially with why is a pilot different to taxes, but starting off, there's a dollar bill. And we all talk about it, 60% goes to the school, and the town could get up to 30%, and the balance goes to the county. Each year when the budget is struck, those percentages are determined and they're carried forward through the year because of the fact that government accounting, as Paige would tell you, tends to lock money in, and any money that the town receives that is not anticipated in the current budget can't be used. Do I get it right? Thank you. So, why is it different, or how is it pilot different property tax? Well, first thing, it's not a tax, it's a fee. The taxes are based on an assessment of what the property is worth today and can vary from year to year depending on the assessment and what it does. Commercial properties fluctuate more than residential properties because they're based on occupancy and a number of other elements. The assessment typically in local taxes is divided into two parts, the land and the improvements. Now, remembering that the land is a key issue when we go forward here, that a pilot is a discount on improvement taxes, not a discount on all taxes. Land tax continue to be paid in the normal manner, even when a pilot is in place. Pilots are designed to be a stable, identifiable revenue over time. And if any of you saw the budget presentation a couple of weeks ago, Paige was able to illustrate how much the pilots are contributing and what we're looking forward to in the future. So it's a good budgeting tool as well. They can be based on 2% of the cost of construction of a project, or more commonly, a percentage of what is called annual gross revenue. Annual gross revenue is really the income to the project once it's completed. The state law says it can be no less than 10% and with a maximum of 15%. There are exceptions to the rules, of course, but we won't go into that this evening. By basing a pilot payment on the project's revenue, the municipality shares in the success of the project. The downside is it can also share in economic declines because it's based on revenue generated. Most pilots are designed in this borough that the percentage of the revenue increases over a period of time. So, the effect a pilot has on property tax, and this is one of the reasons pilots were first brought into effect, that they have a consistent revenue, but more importantly, they help stabilize, and that's why that's underlies, the property tax burden. And if you noticed again in this year's tax budget presentation, the tax increase to residents was minimal, and the pilot offsets a lot of that cost. What we have found since we've been offering pilots for quite some time now is that the new development projects help increase property values throughout the town, not just in the properties that are adjacent to the project, but if you watch the residential real estate market, you'll notice the property values of residential homes in particular has gone very high of late. And it doesn't really show it's slowing down. All right, so long-term tax abatements, commonly known as pilots, were created by the state to encourage growth in areas that have significant challenges. That is the official wording according to the state of New Jersey. But there's some rules that we have to follow. The town has to determine if an area meets the requirements set by the state to be called an area in need of redevelopment. If it is, it's declared by a resolution, and then we have to prepare a redevelopment plan under the guidelines of the local housing and redevelopment law. A pilot can only be offered to development within a designated redevelopment area. And the initial design, and it's proven to be valid in this town, is to incentivize developers to take projects which would cost an unprecedented amount of money to do in normal circumstances if they weren't offered the incentive. And that means essentially we have significant environmental cleanup throughout town with every project. There is a need in many instances for major infrastructure improvements, which the developer has to do, so that by offering them a break on the cost of the taxes for the improvement only. It allows them to get finance. And really, the but-for test is always applied to these things. The but-for test is, if a pilot is not offered to a developer, will they construct the project in this town, or will they go to a town that would? And I mean, we have to determine that, and that's not determined by any one individual. It's determined in committee and in discussion with the developer. So, just to recap here, offers an identifiable cash flow to the town. One of the benefits is that there's no tax appeal, which is really important. They cannot make a tax appeal if they're receiving a pilot. We enter into an agreement with the entity that outlines all the terms. There's also performance and penalty items listed in that agreement. So if they don't do what they said they're going to do, we could null and void the pilot. The pilot fees do not affect or reduce a municipality's state aid, and that's a very important statement. The school district in particular gets state aid each year. If we had buildings being constructed that were paying regular taxes, that would have a direct input and impact on the amount of state aid the borough gets. It would make it decline because we were more profitable. A pilot is not a tax, that's why. Service fees, even though we have built-in escalators in 0.5 here, I've got an example of what it looks like in a minute, but we can't estimate what rent will be in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years out. So that the gross amount of revenue keeps pace with inflation and may in fact keep in front of inflation in many instances. One of the other benefits, and this is for the developer or the builder, in this day and age, and this has been going on since 2008, banks in many instances, when they do their due diligence, particularly when they're looking at the community the property is being built in, if there's no pilot to help offset some of these extraordinary costs, they won't finance the project. So, I stole this from Page's budget presentation. This current year, the borough is anticipating $2,300,000 from construction pilots, because I actually took the other stuff out of it. Now, if these places weren't built and they were just paying regular tax, all we'd get is $280,000. A little bit of a difference there. So that brings me to this one. I hope you can read it. There's a lot of information in this chart, and it was awkward to distill to one page, because every one of these projects listed down the left-hand side have a calculation spreadsheet that has a minimum of 25 columns in it, and it takes into account revenue and land tax and a whole lot of variables, which I initially do the draft and then share with Paige and her financial consultants to make sure I'm honest. But what we're looking at here, regular taxes, all of these projects, if there was no pilot, this was the tax they were paying the year before the pilot was approved. So it's not current day dollars, it's the dollars the year prior to the project's approval. The next column, maybe this is better, the borough share of the tax dollars. So we're showing $1,038,000 there. Of that, the borough would get $315,000. So over the period of all of the pilots shown here, and they vary, some of them are 30 years, the majority of them are 25 years, as shown here, the tax impact to the borough, The borough share of revenue generated from taxes is $8,800,000. Now, when you look at net pilot revenue over the same time frame, you're looking at $133,800,000 that the borough is going to enjoy. Now, I did the math, it's not showing here, but that's a 15-time increase. In percentages, it's 1,500%. So it's a significant boost to the borough's revenue and financial status. And I will take you back to the but-for argument. But for the offering of pilots, we'd be sitting about here somewhere. So it's a strong case when you see it laid out this way, that pilots have a direct and very important impact on what the borough's financial status could be. And going back, and I don't think I'm talking out of school here, but around the year 2000, the borough wasn't sure whether it could exist or raise the taxes anymore. It was that bad. Now, just looking forward a little, there is 3 proposed projects which have not yet started. The Foundry, Oak, which is the steakhouse which will be built on the corner of Main Street and South Bridge Street sometime, hopefully beginning this year. And Somerville multifamily, which has planning board approval. They haven't even spoken to us about a pilot yet. The Foundry, last year, the properties, there were 2 properties involved, paid $53,000. The borough share of that was $36,000. Over the period of a pilot of 25 years, the borough would enjoy $400,000. They're going to net to the borough over the same period of time, $12 million. Oak is not as profitable because it's a restaurant and the calculations are different, but their property paid $56,000 last year, meaning $420,000 over the period of a 25-year pilot. But at the same period of time, it's nearly $2 million that the borough will benefit at the end of the pilot period. So overall, looking at all the projects on this board right now, the borough will be $138 million better off than if those projects were not constructed or put into use. So, find the cursor. Okay, the important part here is when it comes to budgeting, the borough can use other sources of income. Pilots are another sort of income, so it helps stabilize the taxes, and it also allows the borough to undertake projects that it couldn't take if those projects were not built. The benefits, stabilize taxes over the long term. The school budget is funded without having to go into debt, and that's a totally different presentation that I don't have the hours to spend going through tonight. The borough receives a non-tax boost to income. That's repetitive a little bit, but I can't say it enough. The bit we don't talk about, and this is important, and there's no magic modeling tool that we have that allows us to say if you build a 1-bedroom apartment, it's going to generate X amount of disposable income. It's always generalities. So that here, the projects that we've currently got underway are expected to inject into our community on an annual basis between $74 and $100 million each year in expenditure. That's people going out, dining, buying goods, paying for services. It injects a new stream of income, which then supports jobs, goods and services, and everything else. And that's the bit that we never really talk about when we're talking about pilots. The halo effect, it creates jobs in construction, it creates jobs in retail stores, It brings new people into town who spend money in Randy's store. Hey. So it's really good. So the pilots do a number of things, and there's only a few of them listed here. They revitalize the area. They can add competition to existing businesses without cannibalizing the existing businesses. It creates new sources of revenue to stabilize taxes through negotiating pilots and include the public in the initial process, which we have done in all of the 5 redevelopment areas we have. We've had public input meetings, and we develop our redevelopment plans with that input, and the council hopefully then adopts them. And that's all I have for tonight.
I have a question. Payment in lieu of taxes, people's conception is that they're not paying taxes. You say here on the 3rd page that they are. So what does it mean, payment in lieu of taxes? What tax are they not paying?
As I said on, I think it was the 3rd page, they're paying the improvement tax is discounted. The land tax is always paid in full. So taxes always are in 2 parts, land and improvement. They pay the land tax in full.
Collins, one thing I think that is also important, that this particular type of process allows us to buy things that we might not have been able to buy. Like an emergency services facility, perhaps large capital items. We're not quite sure, and quite honestly, that's a whole other presentation. Where are we going to be 20 years from now? We don't know, but we know one thing, we're not going to be here in this building.
But we won't be here for long. But one of
We won't
the
be
things,
here more than 20 years.
one of
from
the
now.
things that I alluded to but never really spoke to is every one of those pilots have a very detailed financial analysis behind them. Stemming off of that, when we began thinking about the emergency services facility, we looked at borough debt, that as it existed then. We looked at projected borough debt going forward, and we looked at expected pilot revenues. And these are broken down annually by year. We can tell you what we think we're going to receive every year. And it turns out that the chart was rather amazing. The income that the borough is going to get more than adequately addresses the borough debt situation. So it's a positive for the borough there that it's financing at really no cost to the borough, things that couldn't normally be done.
And does it exceed the improvement tax?
What improvement tax?
Well, you just said.
Well, I just showed you that it's $138 million versus $8.8 million, so it exceeds it by 15 times.
I didn't see any column here that said what the improvement tax would be and subtract it out. I didn't see that.
Well, it's the left-hand page. I didn't break it out land and improvement.
That's
No,
what
you're
I'm
right, yeah.
The other point is that under this pilot law, the borough can partner with a redeveloper if the project is necessary for the good of the community. For example, when we determined, and we do know that parking in town is critical, we have worked with the redeveloper to build a parking deck on the west end of the borough, a good portion of which will be for public parking. And instead of costing us the whole amount, it would only cost us about half that amount, with the redeveloper putting up the other half, and with pilot funds, hopefully, that would pay for our half. So it's really, it gives us flexibility. So if we need to do something and there's a redevelopment going in, it gives us the ability to work with that redeveloper and saves us money and gives the town an improved benefit. So
The housing and
that's quite growth.
redevelopment, yeah, the housing and redevelopment law actually has a clause in it that says pilot revenue from redevelopment projects can and should be used on other redevelopment projects within the borough. So it doesn't anticipate that pilot income would just offset taxes. But what it does do is it helps, and the assumption is that it will not assist in increasing taxes. And that's the tough one. In the past, when in the early 20s, some towns decided that they would reduce taxes significantly because they were getting this windfall. Unfortunately, the couple of communities that did that, when they ran out of money, they had to increase the taxes significantly, and the whole governing bodies of those towns found themselves without a job within 12 months. So it's not a wise thing to just go in and brutally reduce taxes. And fortunately, Paige sitting over here, she keeps her eye on this stuff, and there's a pretty decent balance that Paige and Kevin are able to bring to the Finance Committee. So it seems to work for us pretty well.
I'm pretty cheap too, you know.
I've heard that. Thank you,
Thank you very
Mayor.
much, Colin.
Wherever you are.
I
Thank you.
just wanted to add, you have the one slide where it says but for.
Yeah.
And most people know I like numbers. I probably was a frustrated math teacher before I became an elementary school teacher. But the $2 million that we're generating in pilot, that we're putting into our budget, by my calculations, we would have to increase the borough tax on your home by $453 for this current year.
That got Randy's attention real quick.
So you know how much you pay now, roughly 30%. I think the average tax is about $11,000, $10,000 and change. So most people are spending about $3,000 in property tax that comes to the governing body. Add another $450 to that just for the borough share for 1 year.
That's for that mythical house, isn't it?
Yeah, that's an average house.
What about houses that are worth more than that?
The numbers are very stark when you look at what the project is paying now. Most of the land that these projects were built on was contaminated land that probably had very little value, if any. And I use my neighborhood, for example, Baker and Taylor, was paying about $160,000 a year in taxes when it was an operating, book warehouse, of which the borough was getting about $50,000. The projections, and they're conservative, that when they're fully rented and operational, I think we're looking at $400,000 a year, something like that.
Yep.
So, and that's for 1 year. So you take that out 25 years, that's $10 million. So, it takes money to run the town, as I impressed on the middle school students today. That $24 million comes out of every homeowner and every property owner's pocket. If we can supplement $2 to $3 million a year in money we don't have to tax, I think that's makes sense. It makes sense. It's like I said, if we were to send out a tax bill in July with an increase of $450 on the borough share, the room would be filled, and would not be filled with happy people. It would be filled with people that want to know, what did you do? Well, we have facts to show that we are trying very hard to stabilize our taxes and make sure that you can afford to stay here. And I think so far, this council and previous councils going back to the turn of the century have done a decent job, and we're not finished.
Yeah.
So
Thank you,
you.
man. Thank you, Colin.
Mayor, are you opening up for public comment, or are you just gonna wait for public comment?
Oh, wait.
Okay. All right, let me just resize my camera.
Colin, you make this available to Kevin?
Kevin's already got it.
All right. We have two ordinances for introduction. First one is 2706, Amending chapter 102, section 74, removing the requirement for minor site plans for sidewalk cafes that are seasonal in nature, and establishing the regulations for seasonal sidewalk cafes in chapter 150, article 3. Motion for introduction only.
So moved.
Second?
Council members Granville Brady,
Yes.
Tom Mitchell,
Yes.
Gina Stravic,
Yes.
Roger Vroom,
Yes.
Randy Pitts.
Yes.
Will this be on for hearing and adoption on May 1st?
No, because it needs to
It
go to
needs to
the
go to planning
planning
board.
board.
Right, so-
Just as a note, the other one went to the planning
Right,
board,
but they have not reached a
but
decision.
they have not reached a decision, so it will not be on the next meeting, it'll be on the following. They have really 45 full days to review it.
Generally, we try to turn them around in 2 weeks if the calendar allows, but in this case, it has to go to another body for their comments as well. And when everyone's had a chance to look at it, we'll bring it back. All right, our next ordinance for introduction.
Question on that?
I'd rather wait until we have the hearing, so. 2707, which is amending Schedule A permitted uses and structures for the Eastern Central Business District. Motion for introduction.
So moved.
Second.
Council members Granville Brady,
Yes.
Tom Mitchell,
Yes.
Gina Stravic,
Yes.
Roger Vroom,
Yes.
Randy Pitts.
Yes.
And this also has to go to planning board, so we're looking at most likely our second meeting in May for that.
Correct.
We'll have a council discussion and comments from the public at that time as well.
Yep.
All right, we have one ordinance tonight for hearing and adoption, was introduced at a prior meeting, 2705, amending ordinance 2676-22-0705, entitled Trucks Over 4 Tons Excluded. Need a motion to open public comment
So
on this.
moved.
Second.
Council members Granville Brady,
Yes.
Tom Mitchell,
Yes.
Gina Stravic,
Yes.
Roger Vroom,
Yes.
Randy Pitts.
Yes.
Public comment question section is open on this ordinance. And Kevin, just very quickly, a summary. This is adding several streets to the no trucks over 4 ton limit that currently exists. We have about 15 streets, I think, that are currently under restriction and signed. And this will add a handful of streets to that list.
Correct. Well, in North Middle, Bell Avenue, Altamont, West Summer Street, and Prospect Street. Often areas where we get complaints about.
And it doesn't prohibit deliveries, correct?
Most delivery trucks are under the 8,000 pound limit. It's designed mostly for tractor trailer. All right, any public comment or question on this ordinance? Hearing none, I'll take a motion to close the public.
So moved.
Second.
Council members Granville Brady,
Yes.
Tom Mitchell, Gina Stravic,
Yes.
Roger Vroom,
Yes.
Randy Pitts.
Yes.
All right, public session is closed. I'll entertain a motion for adoption.
So moved.
Second.
Council member, I'm sorry.
Comment.
Yeah, a couple of things. Yeah, Gina brings up a good point. None of these restrictions affect access to the downtown, especially ShopRite and our larger neighbors in the south end that may have industrial sites, so that does not affect them. This also has an impact on the possibility of warehouses in the area. I know there's a very strong opposition to warehouses in Hillsborough, but if that didn't happen, we don't want people running through our town, going from Route 22 to Route 206 and going through Altamont and going past Councilman Mitchell's house, right, Tom?
That's right.
So it also preserves the streets because we pay a lot of money to get those streets repaved. Actually, the water company pays a lot of money to do the streets. And those streets don't want to be torn up by trucks running through 24/7. So generally speaking, this is really preserving the quality of life in Somerville. And I think it's a great idea.
And if you have a local pickup or drop-off, such as a moving van,
That's fine.
there's an exception for local pickups and drop-off.
Nobody's gonna bother that. Why would you move out of town, Tom?
Roll call.
Council members Granville,
Yes.
I'm sorry.
I'm talking about people moving in. Nobody wants to move out.
Council members Granville Brady,
Yes.
Tom Mitchell,
Yes.
Gina Stravic,
Yes.
Roger Vroom,
Yes.
Randy Pitts.
Yes.
All right, with the open public portion of our meeting, I'll take a motion to open.
So moved. Second.
Council members Granville Brady,
Yes.
Tom Mitchell,
Yes.
Gina Stravic,
Yes.
Roger Vroom,
Randy says.
Yes. Public session is open. If you have a question or a comment, you may approach the microphone, address your comment or question to myself, and we'll start with. Okay.
Hello, Jeffrey Kaiser, 23 Vanderveer. How you guys doing? I came here to talk a couple things. One thing was on behalf of the Environmental Commission. So we had asked to look at an ordinance that I had thought was going to be on the calendar, the agenda for tonight, but I guess it wasn't. But anyway, it was ordinance 2703, 230403 was for the solar cell installations onto non-residential buildings. The EC looked at that ordinance, and we kind of came to the understanding that the planning board also looked at it and kind of went through and found some grammatical things that they kind of fixed up a bit. But there was some verbiage on section TE that caught our attention, and that we wanted to say we agree with the general requirement that solar cell systems should be discouraged from being on the front face of buildings. That's a good thing. However, if the panels were to be installed on the back or rear, where you could possibly allow the builder to remove trees in order to put those solar panels in a position where they would be effective. We're concerned about that because the height of because their panels are being put on top of the buildings, you would have the largest trees actually blocking those panels. So we wanted to suggest and recommend that you adopt the same kind of verbiage that you would put into redevelopment projects, where you would add a sentence stating that the person putting in the solar panels would have to then either replace the tree or pay the borough the same way they do with redevelopment. That's the comment we wanted to make and request that we would have that particular ordinance that hopefully you will consider. The second thing I wanted to say was more from me, and I've also a little bit from the EC as well, is that I belong to the ad hoc zoning committee, and which Councilman Broom and Councilman Pitts put together after Ida. And during our meetings, we often talked about continuing our work to find best practices that could be presented to council, which would address the flooding in town, ways to manage it, and writing ordinances that would set guidelines for the future. And after the ordinances that we looked at, we went through and dealt with, we haven't got back together. So I'm here to ask if we could please reconvene. We also talked about the affordable housing situation here and determined we wanted to look into those types of things and address them. I do recall there was a good deal of excitement amongst the committee to get back together and talk about these things. And so I have spoken to some of the previous members, and I know that there's interest from them. As well, during our EC meetings, we often bring up this topic. We often talk about ordinances that promote best practices in town, that could deal with the flooding in the future as things could get worse. And we've talked about modifying our master plan to accommodate the best practices outlined in the recent studies done by Rutgers, which is shaping the New Jersey DEP regulations that should be released at some point. And we want to listen to our residents as we come face to face with the growing problems of climate change and the redevelopment that we've experienced here in town. Personally, I would like Somerville to be proactive and stand on the leading edge of environmental and affordable housing in New Jersey, and we can demonstrate that we can respond to the needs of our residents and implement policies that help our town thrive, along with a future and manner in accordance with respect to our values of our residents. So even though we didn't agree on everything during our meetings, we were getting work done, and we had all the parties involved, basically. And so I'm just asking if the council would be willing to reconvene the committee so we can move back to work.
I'll defer that answer to our council.
So I'll start with the first thing, the solar panel. That was what we were that's what we were referencing in our ordinance for introduction at our last planning board meeting. It was discussed heavily, and it's being revisited. It has not come back to this board yet, so we don't have the opportunity as the council to look at or make any changes to it at this point because it's currently sitting with the planning board. Representative Larry Cleveland from the Environmental Committee made some points on behalf of the committee. So that is something that is being addressed in the planning board, but we will not discuss that until the next planning board meeting. As far as our committee and different things we've spoken about here, that was brought up at the last planning board meeting because the planning board is where that recommendation sits at this point. It is our understanding that May 15th will be when the state is releasing their new flood advisory information to the state, throughout the state. So our plan at this point is the Historic Advisory Committee asked the planning board to look at something, so that I believe will be on the next agenda based on our meeting. Following that, we also discussed that we need to, because we also kicked the low-income housing debt to the planning board to have them look at it. We were told that will be coming up on a future meeting, as well as the planning board is waiting for those regs on May 15th to come out and look at those in regards to the recommendations that we made. And then from that point, I believe that we'd have the opportunity, because we discussed at the planning board level the implications of what that would look like for the remainder of town as well. So at this point, we're in a holding pattern until we have those regs. And the rest of the things, again, were discussed at the planning board meeting. So these things they're in limbo in a sense of just getting them to the meetings and having them happen, but they're not forgotten. So this council and our other committees are working hard to get those things answered, looked at, and move forward on them.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So, are you saying that the planning board is going to be looking at townwide ordinances that would be in accordance to the New Jersey standards that are coming down, or how to implement the New Jersey standards just in general amongst the town?
Well, so since we don't have it, on hand, it would have to be reflected in the master plan. So any of those regulations and recommendations would be brought in. The reason I brought it up is that our recommendation that we made to the council from the ad hoc committee went to the planning board for their review. And as a new member of the planning board, I was told that they were waiting for the state regs. So since that's coming up on the 15th, that will be after those regulations come out will be when that's discussed. And then we'll go back and take a look at what it looks like, because that was something that I brought up at the last meeting, that it's time that we start making something happen here. And taking a look at it. But again, I'm the advisement of the committee chair and members of the committee. They want to wait until those are in place, and then we can move forward and make sure that we're not going too far and then finding out that it's not in line with what the state has to offer.
And so, are you speaking just specifically about that one ordinance or the set of four? Or are you talking in general about what we had, what we had discussed about keeping this together to kind of look at the entire town and what we would like, how we would like these policies implemented across the entire town?
The planning board would be looking specifically at what this council sent to them from the ad hoc committee. But there would be implications going further as to what that looks like with the master plan and so forth. So there's work that the planning board would have to do before it can come back to the ad hoc committee.
And as you know, the ordinances are generated here, and then we would pass them on to the planning board and environmental commission and historic committee if it involved them for input as well before we have the hearing here. But all the ordinances are generated from here and wind up here for adoption at some future date.
Thanks, guys.
Comment on something?
Very briefly, yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to tell you, let you know that the proposed ordinance on solar panels impacts only the large users or potential users, schools, churches, large buildings. At this point in time, individuals are allowed to put up solar panels, provided they get a permit and have it inspected and go through that process. The purpose of the ordinance was to give the same rights to large users as individuals have. So if I have a church or a school and I want to put solar panels up, right now I have to post an escrow, get bond, go through the board of zoning board of adjustment or planning board, And basically, it becomes a very laborious type of thing. And the whole purpose of it is, if we are a town that believes solar panels, solar energy is an important factor in the environment, the largest potential customers for solar panels are being stopped. There's no reason why we can't have your church or the school or whatever get a permit, go through the process the way everybody else does, and make sure that they abide by the rules. So this doesn't really affect the small, my house, which has trees on it. Well, I can do that anyway at this point. That has nothing to do with it. Just wanted to let you know that for the environmental information. So this is a large, just includes more people.
Right. Just if I can say one more thing.
Sure.
I left that out in my comment, was that the Environmental Commission supports solar in town. I mean, we need to move forward. I think I said that. So definitely support like the building of solar, of course, in town. So.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks.
And just on a note, there'll be a public hearing on that.
Yeah.
Right, so.
Does our scout have any questions?
No.
All right. Yes.
Yeah, Rich owned the old 124 West First Street, Somerville. In here just to listen tonight about the pilots. I didn't come here to say anything, but got out of the firehouse, I tend to say stuff. I think that the pilots have magically transformed this town. I've been here quite a few years, and I remember when this town crashed and burned, and it stayed burned for a long time. And then toward the end of the 60s, Mayor Shea had the foresight as a council to start redeveloping in this town. It was extremely controversial. It ended up with condemnation. In fact, I worked for the town back then. Tore down lots of buildings, ended up with the greatest vacant lot you ever saw in Somerville. And it stayed vacant for quite some time. And then a small highway shopping center was built there with a Pathmark. And I was never thrilled with that, but it was okay. Thankfully, it was marginally successful. Because at some point, it was not economically feasible. And it went away, and Jack Morris and company bought the place and built something. That was the real start of things. Pilots. Now, we talked about environmental problems. I firsthand seen the environmental problems in this town. Where the station house is right now, that nice apartment building that stands there. Went down there one Wednesday afternoon in the middle of summer with a column of black smoke, big orange flames. The only thing burning was the ground. We had a fire on the dirt was burning. And we couldn't put it out because if we put water on it, it would have floated down the street and set somebody else on fire. So we had to babysit this thing until it calmed down. You dig a hole in Somerville and you're going to discover oil. Hallelujah, they discovered oil. It doesn't work out real well. It takes money to clean that mess up. Pilots have allowed that to happen. This town was pretty raggedy for a long time. It's been getting better, getting better. Development has been the answer. Those neighborhoods which were crap are now nice. You see people walking on the streets. And I'm going to get called a lot of names, by the way, Jim. And I judge a town, I travel a lot. And I go around the whole country, I'll be in Tulsa next week. And I judge a town by two things. One is if they have restaurants open at night. The other thing is, are the young ladies well-dressed, walking around between 11 and 2 in the afternoon? Because that means they're working and they got money. This is that town today. It wasn't that way. This was a shop and beer town for a long time. You walk down Main Street at night, and you and the newspapers rolling around. And Jim and John's Tavern and Fran's Lounge, that was it. So development has changed this town. Everybody who says development's no good is missing the big picture. Everybody says, what do you think of Somerville? And I said, it's not the same town I grew up in. It's much better. This town is viable, it's alive, and there were times, especially after they opened the Somerset Shopping Center, where this town was dead in the water. Nothing was going on here. Everybody moved out, and here we sat. And thanks to all the guys, starting with Mayor Shea, and I know Barry will say that's not true, but Mayor Shea started this thing back in, I'm not even sure what party he's in, but he started this thing. And it's kind of bounced along and done well. And here we are today. People come to this town. People used to flee this town. So development is the best thing that's happened to us. We got to keep it going. We got to need new ideas because things wear out and got to get replaced. I'll shut up. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. I remember Hale's Junkyard, right on the East Main Street.
Yeah, put fires out in there.
And most of the new projects that are being built have reclaimed land that would never be developed because of the cost.
Yep.
You know, a small lot that's contaminated, you can't just, dig out the old dirt and put new dirt in. It's not that simple. So it's, private investment needs an incentive. Otherwise, as the slide said before, they'll go somewhere else. And I appreciate your comments. You have an understanding and a history of this town that, a lot of newer people to the town, they only see Somerville 2023. They
Just
don't
as it
see
is-
that when the mall opened, the Commons Mall with their free parking and that what happened here.
Just as an aside, you can tell your wife, this past week, we had a cast iron pipe donated to the Fire Museum. Somerville Iron Works embossed on it. That was a big industry in this town, but it contaminated that end of town. So lots of jobs, but then it died, and it was a mess. Not anymore. There's people living there.
People, not pollution. Thank you. Any more public comment? Motion to close.
So moved. Second.
Council members Granville Brady.
Yes.
Tom Mitchell. Gina Stravic.
Yes.
Roger Vroom.
Yes.
Randy Pitts.
Yes. All right, we have a series of consent
Mayor,
resolutions.
before you move to consent,
Yeah.
I do have a resolution I forgot to add on the
Okay.
agenda. It's a standard resolution. It's not a surprise. It's a reduction of performance bond.
Oh.
It's for one Veterans Memorial, the,
I'll add it to that.
thank you, 150. That's 150. I was prepared, except for I forgot to give it. It's all written out.
All right, are there any that council would like to pull for discussion? Okay, I'll summarize each of these. 138 is rescinding a resolution approving Connor Spots to be hired as a seasonal laborer. 139 is approving the Z Car Club to utilize parking spaces in front of the courthouse on June the 9th for cruisers. 140, approving the legal runaround 5K and fun walk on Thursday, May 25th at 4 p.m. 141, appointing Mallory Bergen to serve on the Recreation Committee. 142, approving a change order to purchase order to Exemplis, trading care of Paramount FMS, an adjustment from $42,000 and change to $45,000 and change. 143, approving the reservation of parking spaces on East Main Street between North Bridge and Grove from 2 to 10 p.m. for the naturalization ceremony and Flag Day event on June 16th of this year. 144, adopting the title and job description for a seasonal recreation program coordinator. 145, approving the hiring of Marcy Tyson as a temporary alternate deputy registrar. 146, authorizing the Borough of Somerville to apply for an emergency management performance grant in the amount of $10,000. 147 is authorizing the release of a performance bond for DGM Station House, also known as Block 61, Lot .602. 148, approving the hiring of Nasir Pettis Jackson as a laborer for the Department of Public Works. 149, approving a street closure on Grove Street in Main and High for the county's Diversity Festival from noon to 4 on Sunday, October 25th. And the last one, a walk-on approving a bond reduction for Hungy Station, 1 Veterans Memorial Drive, in the amount of $21,945. I have a motion.
We'll move.
Second.
Council members Granville Brady.
Yes.
Tom Mitchell.
Yes.
Gina Stravic.
Yes.
Roger Vroom.
Yes.
Randy Pitts.
Yes. And as we do every 2 weeks, we have bills to pay. Councilman Brady?
Yes, we do, and I thank Colin for giving us that synopsis of how we're going to pay them. I move the payment of bills and vouchers in the amount of $1,011,774.87.
Second.
Council members Granville Brady.
Yes.
Tom Mitchell.
Yes.
Gina Stravic.
Yes.
Roger Vroom.
Yes.
Randy Pitts.
Yes. Mr. Mitchell?
Move for adjournment.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting adjourned. Thank you.